Hello, Andrew here, and in this video series I'm going to dive into business architecture. Essentially, business architecture is a way of designing a business. My purpose here is to use lightweight models and techniques to show you how we can do business architecture. I find that the business architecture discipline tends to get overly complicated when it doesn't need to be. There are simple but not simplistic models that we can bring into play while we are going through designing our business. So what I'm going to do today is just start to set up some of the fundamentals for you, start to lean towards the principles of business architecture. And we're going to take it slowly to start and layer in the models and techniques as we go along in this journey. So this video series is more of the extension of where I wanted to go with the value chains. Value chains will come into this. Let's jump into this. So in my practices, I do a lot of work in agile coaching, but I find when I do agile coaching, there are elements that come into play that don't fully hit the whole scope of the business. So what do I mean? Where we typically come into is an area of app development. So let's take a look here. So we have an app development. And in our app development layer, we're building out some specific capabilities. Okay. Then we may have a team that works on our architecture or our platform. And what we'll call this is, let's call it platform, for example. So platform can be things like our cloud surface, so Google, so GCP, the cloud, Google Cloud Platform, or Microsoft Azure can be a platform. If you do something that's homegrown, that could be your platform as well if you're building right onto the copper. But a lot of people here use a cloud-provided platform. We also have the AWS service as well. And what happens is capabilities get built for your platform. So what happens is we get a stitching together. So if we take these two bits and bring them together, then we get the EA or enterprise architecture practices. But often what I find is there's a missing component to this. The hamburger is not fully formed here. There's the business side of it. There's a business design that can be specific business capabilities or processes. So we may have a business process, or we have specific capabilities. And when we're looking at building a solution, we want to take from our agile perspective, if we think about, well, we're building units of value, we want to look at, well, what's the vertical slicing that's going to cut through this and take perhaps the segment of capabilities that are going to work together to form a solution. Okay, so this is a setup here. I'm making this simple, but not necessarily simplistic, to give you an idea that, well, we're going to be looking at a bunch of components that come together in order to help us build our solution. So what are some of these components that we should be looking at? Now let's start with, over here, our business strategy. What we're looking to accomplish with the business strategy is to set our goal. Okay, so this is like an aim that we're setting for. And the way of setting goals is to look at objectives. Okay, so an objective can be is that I have a point where I'm at right now with my business, and there's a particular direction where I want to take things. So if that were to be my baseline here, perhaps in this specific example is we're looking to do an uplift, perhaps a 5% gain in our recurring revenue. So 5% annual recurring revenue uplift. So that might mean we have to bring in more customers, or we have to charge more for the customers using our product. And so an objective has an anchor point, has a direction in which we want to go, and then there's a temporal element. And because I said ARR, the first piece is annual, so that is per year. Okay, in that particular element. So there may be that's objective 1. So objective 1 is this right there. We may have other objectives, objective 2, objective 3. And with those objectives comes a funding amount. Okay. So we have to determine, well, what are the specific goals that we want, allocate funding appropriately. So this could be a 50% here, 25%, another 25% for those specific objectives. Then what we do is we work on the business processes. And a note about these items is they're not done in isolation. And I'll explain that a bit further here. But a business process is the thing that we do. Okay, so I have a process step in our process. We go from one point to another point, step 2, step 3, step 4, to a result for a particular customer. So if we're doing things quite well, hey, here's our customers, they like how they can flow through our product or flow through whatever the service is. And if they're happy about that, then great, they'll pay us for the service. And also what may happen is, great, referrals are awesome, so they start to bring their buddies into the platform as well. And that can tie into our bringing up the annual recurring revenue here. So they can provide that monetary uplift as we make them happy because our business processes are working. But also, another element that comes into play here is the actual business capabilities. So with our business capabilities, these are things that we need to build. So examples of this could be the ability for us to take in money, the ability for us to generate a marketing program. So how do we get our customers here in the first place? So these two buddies, perhaps there's a referral program. Okay, there could be a specific referral program that we built out. As we're building out that referral program, what we may need to do, or what we do with all our processes, especially with business information, is we have to understand about the things that go into the process. Things. Let's put that there. Thing. Okay. And this is where our business systems come into play. So our platform, we need to be able to put information into the platform. We have to model the business context and create an abstraction that allows us to put it into code. All computer code is just models that we put into play. And the better the model that we put in, perhaps the more effective we are at making decisions that are going to give us this uplift for our objective 1. And the last one here is the business performance optimization. Okay, so the business performance, specifically what we want to do there is to optimize. Well, how do we do that? Well, as I was mentioning, the optimization funding into our information model could be to look to refine the models, to make them tighter, to make them more efficient as we learn things about the business, especially refactoring and taking things out of the model that no longer make sense. Then also, as we learn more about the business and the capabilities that we need, we can build out capabilities. But also there's a maturity. So you might hear something like maturity model. Hey, we need to go from 1 to 5. We need to improve. Okay, well, how do we get from 1 to 2? Well, that might be an objective here. We have to put the funding into some of that capability improvement in order, for instance, to open up this referral program or to get us to that next level of marketing. Business process optimization, in a word in our agile circles, Kaizen. We can look at our processes. We can find out, well, where can we optimize, shorten perhaps lead time or tack time within our processes, or eliminate waste in many different ways. Then this information can feed back into our strategy. So what if an objective can't be hit? Just say objective number 3, where we wanted to do a movement of the maturity model, perhaps up to a level 4 in a specific marketing context, and then through feedback realize that's really not going to be possible. Then we can pivot on some of the business strategy and look at perhaps there's another set of objectives that makes more sense for us to approach. Okay, so these are business strategy, the ability for us to aim, set our objectives, business information, taking the things, putting the things into models and abstractions, the business capabilities, giving us the ability to actually have a capability through which we should have easy and effective processes that we can follow in order to achieve the results that we need for our customers and stakeholders, and then the overall continuous optimization of those. And when these are all put together into balance, that gives us the business architecture. And there's no single unified theory that's going to happen here. There's a bunch of models, and you're going to find that there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen as we start to dance between these bubbles. And again, it's not one, we're not in one bubble after another. It's not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it's nothing like that. So now we're going to step into some of our models in the business architecture. And when we're starting off, we have very little understanding, very little detail of what we're trying to do. And so where we start off, we're in a naive quadrant. And let's take a look at a direction that we can potentially go. So let's assume that, all right, we don't know much of what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to work and we're going to model, we're going to build diagrams, we're going to analyze and investigate. So here, what's actually happening? We've got analysis, we got expert opinion. Okay. And we're building detail. And think of that, we're creating a map, for example. We gotta go here and we're gonna hopefully find our place to the buried treasure, the promised land in our business. We're gonna work, and sometimes in these models you see there's a joke where they have a line that goes from A to B, but then you don't realize that line in the other is we go all over the place. There's so many things that get in our way. What we don't understand it, because it's more of there's a bit of fog that's in our way. So if we fog that out, we don't have an easy way of understanding that. What I find some teams do is they start to model, and they start to model, and then they start to model. So what happens at this point, let me take some of this out here, is they model to something that becomes incomprehensible. Okay, so we might be in a bit of an incomprehensible space. But the team might not have the awareness that they are in the incomprehensible space. So what happens is they keep going. Okay. They keep moving and moving. Then they finally start to do some execution. So along this line, a little bit of the doing comes into play. So if we do plan, do, check, adjust, PDCA loop, and then you finally start to do some iterations. What you might find is if you have very complicated model, lots of detail into it, you find out that you land in a complex space really fast. Okay. So we landed in the complex space. It's like, okay, well, what are we going to do now? So we feel like we're stuck here. So it might feel that when we're in the naive space coming back up here, and we want to move towards having a lot of understanding but keeping the detail little. In a naive space, it might feel that we don't have enough information. So there's something that we have to do there, but also if we're in the complex space and we really want to start to simplify our detail, because we can't figure it out. There's just too much going on, and people start to get frustrated. So here they are, little lightning bolts and steam coming out of their head because it's like, this is just too much. We don't know what's going on. What we then do is we can start to iterate and iterate and iterate and iterate and iterate. Okay, so what we're doing is in our agile practices, we're complexity busting, maybe decompose. So we do our decomposition of the work and then try to deliver elements of value of that work. On the other side, if we have a little bit of information, we may have assumptions. Okay, so what we might do is a cycle to test our assumption, see where we get, test our assumption, see where we get. If we find that we're going down a pathway where things are starting to get too complicated, we can always pivot. We can cut particular probes that we're trying to do. It's not a beneficial attractor. We're not getting the value out of it, so we can cut that path and move along a different path. And what we attempt to do here is move towards the elegant. It's providing us a lot of understanding, but we're not going into excessive detail. We're providing value at this point. This is value without the huge overhead of, just say down here in the incomprehensible is where we have the big upfront design. We get stuck into specification land where we can't get out of. So in the business architecture context, to close up this conversation here, we're going to look at principles of business architecture and how we can come up with that elegant model, that elegant way of moving forward. And it's not going to take us a lot of time. So some of these models that come into play in the series will be simple but not simplistic. That gives you the ability to kind of facilitate your way through the potential complexities that arise and the incomprehensible. We want to stay away from there, move into the elegant, and provide simple models so that it's easy to engage with your stakeholders as you're moving through your business architecture conversations and journey.